Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 2 o'clock. Let's get started, please. Call the meeting to order. Thank all of you for being here. I believe that the record show, Madam Clerk, that we have staff and elected officials only, no one in the audience. So we'll move to number 2 on the agenda, public comment. Since there's no one here from the public, assuming there will not be any comment. Number 3 on the agenda, Seagull Drive. Mr. Hewitt, we're shocked with the numbers that you're going to talk about. I guess the cost of fuel and all the petroleum products and hauling further and more expensively for the contractors. It all adds up, and it's painful for those property owners on that street, Seagull. So, do you want to give us an overview of that right quick, please?
Sure. The short version is that we got one bid for the paving of Seagull Drive in the amount of $208,150. This equates to a $1,000 increase per 50-foot lot. Previously, it had been communicated to the folks on that street that the assessment would be $1,450 per 50-foot equivalent lot. The board seems to me that the board has 3 options. You can make the award based on the Highland bid at $208,150, which will let you, in almost certain terms, be close to getting it completed before Memorial Day. You could choose to rebid the project in an effort to bring the prices down. The likelihood of completing it before Memorial Day certainly decreases with that, along with the distinct possibility that bids will even come in higher than the current Highland bid. And the board can also choose to do nothing. If the board chooses to award the contract at $208,150, it'll have to appropriate an additional $100,000, half of which will come from the increase in the per lot assessment, and the other half from the general fund balance, $50,000 from each. So there's a motion that if the board wants to consider approving the award and the budget amendment for you.
It's a half a penny, isn't it? $50,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay. No.
And if we haven't dialed in, but if there's discussion on it, the engineer record is on standby if we need to talk to him.
Is this just basically increase in material cost, David?
From what is at the engineer's memo there, it's petroleum products, labor, fuel, and the materials. Yes, sir. There was some additional piping at the end of the street with the turnaround, which added a little bit there. That wasn't in the preliminary cost assessment. I think that the Highland has done work for the town before. They've been timely and got a good track record in the past with working for the town.
With this big of a differential, should we notify the property owners and make sure that they want this done?
Well, the petition to be assessed holds. So if the board, if you choose to once you say we want to be assessed, you're to be assessed. If you go back and do a redo, then you're going to have to repetition. You're going to have to go back through a repetition with another assessment, another engineer's assessment. You start all over.
Nope, people.
I don't think it's gonna get any cheaper.
No. The man that's doing my personal driveway in High Point has called me and said that's gonna cost me $5,000.
I make a motion that we move forward with the paving of Seagull Street.
Second.
I'll second that.
Did you second, Ms. Pat?
Yes, I did.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Can we do one for the budget amendment too, separately? Like a
Alright.
motion?
Okay, so we've had that, motion made and voted on as unanimous, and now somebody make that motion about it.
Make a motion to amend ordinance 22-06.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's also unanimously passed. Whew. All right,
What's this gonna mean next fall paving?
we're on number 4, board objectives. All right, what's the pleasure of the commissioners? How do you want to proceed with this? We all have received our list of things to consider. Madam Clerk, did you receive anything from the commissioners or
I received one.
one? So
Are we allowed to add anything on?
Yeah, you,
Sure.
those are
This
your
is our
goals, and
meeting.
you guys can add whatever you would like.
you can take away or add whatever you want to do.
What do I need to do then?
I guess, if you want, it depends how you wanna do the process. So if we're gonna add, I would go ahead and do that first, and then you guys can discuss how you wanna score them from there. So I would just make a motion to, I mean, I wouldn't, I, consensus,
We don't
I
need
would
a
think
motion to
it'd
do
be fine.
that.
I
It's a
just-
workshop.
I just,
Just what do you want to add?
on the end of Heron Landing Drive, it was started, but it was kind of I mean, it got whatever put off the side there, but to
You
get
talking
the
about the east
easement.
end?
No, it would be on the east end of Heron. To get it, to go ahead and work and get us an easement that will get us over into that dike area for the town. And also, while we're doing that, let's go ahead and put a dog park in there. A lot of people have talked the whole time about having a dog park. It's the ideal place for it, and we ought to be able to do it pretty inexpensively. But I think we need to have a good access there for the whole town. And it's something we need to move forward with.
Okay, we've got the dog park in here.
Hmm?
The dog park's in here.
Okay, and then just get
So then we
get
can
us
talk.
an easement approved, and, if we can do
Madam
that-
Clerk, where would be a good place to add the easement in this?
Was the easement voted on?
Is that infrastructure?
Yeah. I think that-
All right. So that would be page 3, right before the word communication. Okay, easement from east end
Correct.
of Heron Landing Wine,
Correct.
or wind, whichever one you want to do.
It's wine, or Gargana says, it says it's wine, just like the wine in trailer.
Oh, good. Double blinded?
Yeah.
All right.
Whatever anybody wants to call it.
Anybody want to add anything else?
Yes, ma'am, yes, sir, I want to add one other thing.
All right.
There's an easement that's already there between Heron Landing 1 and Heron Landing 2, okay? And it's never been taken in, I think it's like a cart path 20 foot wide or something that ties the two ends. If we look on the map, you'll find it on one of the original maps. And I'd like to see the town, let's go ahead and open that up if we can't do anything but gravel or whatever, but get that open for the community.
Yeah, because once they built that last house down there, that used to be the way you could go around the backside and get in it, but that house there, now you're trespassing.
And all this is, on that Heron Landing, on Heron Landing, the first one, it's the end of a cul-de-sac, the end of that cul-de-sac. It's like a 20-foot easement that goes from there to Heron Landing 1, okay? It's already there, it's on the deed, okay? And if we could take and get that opened up and get it gravelled or whatever period to clean it up. It just ties those two subdivisions together, that's all. See, we have people that live in the first one, and that'll give them a shorter access to get back to go to the dog park, rather than have to walk all the way down, come down Swordfish, and then go down here and Lane. That's the reason I brought that up.
Christie, was this one of the, I know that the Parks and Rec Master Plan had an evaluation of dog park locations. Was this one of them? Do you remember?
I don't remember off the top of my head if that was one or not. I'd have to go get a copy. I think that they did not evaluate that. I think they did Scotch Bonnet and then some of those little, what they thought was side streets that can't be used because they're on the POW bill map. Plus, they would be right between two residential properties.
Yeah, I don't have any problem getting an easement, but until a decision's made exactly where the dog park's going to be, it sort of changes the urgency of it. Because I feel we do need a dog park set up again this year.
They did, I don't know if you listened to the March meeting or not, but they did talk about that as an objective. It's just the point of finding the property to do it.
Tree fell out of my yard across the street, took out all the power. My neighbors loved me. Everything had to stay there like that.
So I did this because I did this morning with Senate because I thought with all of these different objectives and bits and pieces that this more accurately details and that we can just assign an objective to each of these.
Madam Clerk,
with these
I don't
details
seem to have a
so that
copy
we
of
don't
those.
lose time during review or read the time and what it is we expect.
Okay. My packet is,
I know that.
in the
I'm
car.
stunned by that, but what can you say? Could have done it several months ago.
What's it doing in the car, bro? You came to the meeting, you know to bring the stuff.
I was late, I was gonna have mine.
Look.
You got here for the gavel. It's just done.
Heather was
You
calling.
hear that?
Have you
She
printed
said
it
she
3
was
times?
late, she still brought her.
Did you
list.
go see Heather?
And there was just, it just doesn't work well in that time.
Thank you, Heather. Apologize for the delay.
Can I add one more thing, or do I need to be quiet?
No, good.
No, you keep out.
Okay. On the end of Swordfish, okay, you get to the end of Swordfish and you turn right. The town owns a chunk of that property right there, correct, David?
Is that the one that I was publicly castigated for
Yeah,
bush hogging
you
that
been
time?
castigated 2 or 3 times on that. Okay.
Yes, sir, I know right where it is.
Where you never going again?
Where I'm never going.
Okay. My question is, like one of those, if we could work it in some kind of way to where maybe we can put a public walkway for citizens, over, have some access there to the water.
To the waterway?
Yeah.
You mean put a dock out there, like to just
Or-
walk to the end and be able to, whatever it is you want to do?
That's right.
Maybe have a gazebo at the end that people can sit and admire the marsh?
There you go.
Excellent idea.
I mean, these are all things just that, to help the town. You know what I'm saying? We have the property, so why not, maybe we could apply for a grant to put a walkway in or something, maybe it's worth
Call it a mini park, like the pocket park.
Huh?
That is identified, if that's why you're looking at me. They talked about using street ends and also
Right.
connectivity with walking trail.
Can we generalize your request and just say what she just said?
What I said earlier, the question before, when y'all came to the map, Pat asked if the Heron Land and Wine property was specifically identified as a potential dog park, and I told her I didn't think that it was, but when Gerald just made his comment about making those possibly small parks, I said those were identified in the plan as trying to take street ends, turn them into park areas or passive recreation, and anything we could connect, which would go back to his previous. Connecting that for a long linear walking trail would be, it just didn't include the dog park part that she was asking about.
Can you condense that into one sentence that we can put on this?
Yes, both of those would be included in some manner in the Parks and Rec Master Plan document that came out in September 2021.
To review, yeah.
For passive recreation pursuits at street ends and walking connectivity.
There you go. Sounds complicated enough.
Let's just take the jacket off.
That got Christie fired up.
All right, anybody got anything else you want to add? I forgot to write that down.
Please don't make me say it.
All right, anything else? All right, if not, let's decide how we're going to go through these.
Oh, I sat down, I've been out of town, so I couldn't do it until this morning. I sat down with my computer and had looked at all the objectives and saw how many objectives had to do with basically 4 main, what I call projects, which was pier property, parking, infrastructure, and 796 OBW. So I pulled together basically descriptions of each one of them with assumptions of what I'm thinking will be done on each one before the end of this fiscal year. So our objectives for next year are based on what has to be done, not also including things that I think we're going to do this year. And I kind of laid out just key actions for each one of them, thinking if we want to approve some more detailed objectives so we don't get several months into the year and then we're struggling again with what were all the items we wanted to cover. You know, this could be a good start for us to have a more thorough sort of description of the objectives. So I had Heather give everybody this as like starting the discussion on these projects that maybe we can use something like this so that, again, we start the year in, I would just say, a pretty clean, detailed way, and it saves us coming back with more meetings about now exactly what is it, everything we want done. And again, I'm assuming things are going to happen in this budget year. Like on the pier property, I'm assuming the underwater inspection will be completed with some preliminary reports, that we'll have a BOC-approved site plan, and, you know, we're going to have the temporary restroom facilities in place, parking lot's been organized, decisions been made on whether we allow food trucks on site, and if yes, vendors are getting lined up, and that the RV slots are being made operational for the town to capture revenue from rentals. Now, if those are not going to happen, then yes, they all need to be moved into the objective for the pier property for next year. But I'm thinking in the next 3 months, we're going to get a number of things done. And this is a question for what, you know, what is it staff feels will actually be fiscal year 22-23 versus things that are done this year.
Is that a question to me?
Well, it's staff, so if, yeah. I know there are different things underway.
We're awaiting the underwater inspection response from the dive crew back to the consultant engineer. The last day of getting back to me of the last 2 weeks in March is today. Hadn't heard back from him, but I think that's a safe assumption that there'll be something forward in front of the board for the sometime in May preliminarily, an approved site plan for the building and access lot in the same time frame. Christie's working on Cama grants, part of grants that will require site plans to be developed as part of that. I think those are due when?
So
Soon?
both the grants will be on the April agenda for the commissioners to approve sending them in. we bought ourselves a little bit of time, it's due by May 1st, and the access grant for DCM to do some improvements on that 50-foot site is due, I think, the 22nd of April, right after the board meeting.
So there will be conceptual plans for those properties that are suitable for being included in the grant applications anyway, that are going in. On as far as temporary restroom facilities in place, it depends on what y'all want to do. We've run some preliminary numbers, and basically some type of trailer, 3-seat, 3 handicap accessible, 3 fixture trailer, gonna be $6,000 a month. I know that when we went through it very briefly, I think the rent on them's about $3,000 a month. That's nothing, no paper products, no cleaning or anything like that. For the on an annual basis, that's up above $50,000. I think that type of money can be more well leveraged for making the permanent improvements to the real bathrooms.
Yes, sir.
And that temporary restroom facilities for this season would be defined as porta potties. I know that's not what people would want to hear, but the rational expectation, I think, is more prudent as far as leveraging the town money on doing that thing. The parking lot being organized, there'll be a ordinance amendment coming to the board at the April meeting. The vendor has been on site with Frank and Company, along with Public Works, to lay out that to accommodate. We're at the 80 number that we have used to program for the site.
Good.
Whether or not that's exactly what it is, it's what it is, but we're hand grenade close on it. The decision being made on food trucks on the site, as far as y'all making a decision and setting that to start by Memorial Day, I'm gathering and feeling that that's probably acceptable to the board to move forward with getting vendors lined up for that. I don't know exactly what that construct of lease or arrangement would be, but we have 8 weeks to figure that out. I think that probably the details of the food truck, the actual logistics of hooking that up, the infrastructure's in place, and with our Public Works Department, with all their talents, skills, and abilities, that it could be operational by Memorial Day. Probably the longest pole in that tent is discerning exactly what that contractual relationship would be. Those details could be worked out, I believe. The RV slots, making them operational, again, likewise, as those are utility questions involving the replacement of the electrical outlets, water and sewer hookups, which are in place. We haven't done a full operational assessment of those facilities yet, but we've been poking around in the parking lot, and we think that we've got enough to work with, especially since there were at least one big RV on station there, I believe 3 months ago, So that is probably a realistic expectation or goal that can be put into place. The
How many slots do we have?
it's 5 or 6. We're not sure, but we know it's 4 solid, 5 or 6 maybe, and that's part of the actual operational assessment there, because the way that it's configured is that we may actually have a few more parking spaces than we thought we did because of the way that the place is laid out. But we're down in the fine tuning of these issues there. The one thing that we'll probably have to work out on the administrative side is to understand and put a system in place on how we would manage those rentals. I mean, would it be something that's similar to an online system that like we do with the boat dock, or something else? So that would be a detail that would have to be worked out. But again, I think that the decision for the board to make that would enable the staff to move ahead was that I didn't see anybody's head go from side to side when I said porta potties, and if you would, I guess by consensus, affirm the willingness to develop the vendor relationship on placing food trucks out there, we can set that into motion as to is it going to be 1, is it going to be 2, is it going to be 3, what would the contractual, where we're going to put them, those kinds of questions. Those are the things that we would ask in developing whether or not you want food trucks out there. But that was.
Well, it basically means that we don't have to have any of this in next year's objectives, which is really what I wanted to, it's all going to be there when we need it there by high season, and we can start the objectives then with assuming all of this is done.
David, I have.
But there is one thing that I want to point out, is that I want to make sure that we make it crystal clear that there's a lot that's going to go into pulling this together. There's some things that are going to have to be set to the side as far as other things that are going on. This is going to take time. It's going to take staff effort. So, yeah, we kind of know based on what our or what the town's adopted plan had laid out, but now is the time where the work, the real work begins. And so I just want to point that out. So between the next 90 days, this is going to consume a whole bunch of time.
We got to get it done.
My question is, David, can the RV spots be used for the food trucks? Would that not be an optimal place for those?
People lose revenue off of.
I mean, I don't think we need to be in the RV rental
It's
business.
revenue.
That's oceanfront
It's
property.
$50,000 worth of revenue,
Talking
man.
about, am I,
Revenue.
that's prime camping property right there, and that's the biggest thing that.
Yeah, Holden, man,
I would
that's,
do that.
needs to stay at RV. I mean, you
What are
do
they,
the math.
well, aren't they
This
renting
year.
for 1,000, 1,200 a week?
I don't know, but if you rented it out by the month, you're talking 6 units or 5 or 6, whatever you come up with, hopefully 6. But
And if we upgrade the electrical,
if you did $800 a month for the year, it's $9,600 a unit times 6. I mean,
yeah,
you'd
that's,
be done for a food truck.
that'll pay for the
Plus,
porta
you move
potties.
the food truck somewhere else and charge them too.
Correct.
Well, if the building's closed, can't they go in front of the building?
Absolutely.
And then we get
Wherever you
revenue
want.
from the trucks and revenue for the campers, and that pays for the potty.
There's an area out front where old septic tank and stuff is, there may be a park there.
It's police.
David, is that gonna be able to
So are
be
you asking
improved?
that you need,
Yeah, but
All I need is for the board to approve
Yeah,
the
so you'll figure
construct,
that- you'll
and,
figure-
and we'll work
yeah.
out the details
Yes.
as far as when we start looking at those elements as part of the site plan.
I mean, I agree with you that porta pots aren't the ideal, but at that kind of money, it's better put into getting the ADA compliant bathrooms done this year so that there's real bathrooms next year.
I have one question, David, and Tim, somebody knows the answer, but I saw the steps were taken out, the mats over the dune, is that a usable access for the summer?
Well, it's a whole lot better
Better
than
than
what was
steps,
there.
yeah.
Those
I
steps are
agree.
dangerous,
And
yes, sir.
people are walking across it right
I'm
now.
just saying, that's a usable,
it's safer than what was there?
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been an access all along, to include out on the ocean front, the way that we've got the post and rope done. The improvement that we did there was really no cost. Let's just sweep up some stuff and make sure nobody gets hurt.
Yeah,
I think.
it's better than what was there, put it to you that way.
Good job.
And on that mat, it would have been down 10 minutes, and I had a lady looking at a big strand of hours and stuff, it looks better already.
Yeah, it does.
David,
So you need a motion for
what
it?
do we need to do as far, what time frame do we have on getting the restroom started? Is that something we need to approve something, or are you gonna give us a budget?
I'll make a general statement
Okay.
on that, is that, anything that you're going to want to fund by leveraging grants, or anything that requires a permit, is going to be, it is going to be contingent on the actions of others. So as far as asking me, well, I mean, if we got to get a permit to do something, those are permits that are not going to be issued locally, depending on what they are. For example, a bulkhead in the marsh, that's not going to be a permit that we get issued here. You know, or if you're talking about the restrooms down there, if we're going to be putting in for a grant that will pay for a portion of that upfit, I mean, that's, the guidelines hadn't even come out yet on that, right? Because that's the Partif grant on the inside.
The Partif grant that we're applying for is for reimbursement for land acquisition. We're doing a Land and Water Trust Fund grant that's reimbursement for land acquisition.
Right.
And we're doing a improvement grant that will build on the one DCM just gave us that you guys approved, that would put a hatter's ramp and a walkway over the 50-foot lot. Currently, there are none out that we are using for improvement purposes for restrooms, but that doesn't mean that they won't be here for the future.
We got so many grants circling in the sky that it's hard to keep up with them.
Right.
So, I mean, that was a general statement. I was saying, y'all should put a stack of chips on the table and we can go to work with it. I mean, is the real short brusque answer. And how long that will take is going to be dependent on, which one of you fellows are gonna sketch out a design to be built, or are you gonna sub it to a, what's the process you're gonna use for design? Well, I mean, when you ask me how quick it's gonna take me to build a house, well,
Gotta have a plan.
what you gonna put into it, kind of thing.
But like what the bathrooms is, I mean, Tim, will Tim be doing the inspections and everything, issuing the permits on that?
Tim can inspect the building, but if it requires some type of Cama permit, we're gonna have to get that from Wilmington.
You can't issue the Cama, I understand that, it has to come out of Wilmington. I'm talking about the building permit.
We'll issue the building permit.
Yeah,
And what about the
We'll
restroom
approve
permit?
the design, but we can't design it.
you can't design it, but we can
Yeah,
find somebody to draw it up
design
for us. Relatively easy.
I weigh in on that. I think you should get a architect and you know, all the town buildings kinda look the same.
Yeah.
You know, kinda keep it in line with that and get a couple renderings, a couple different options and just see what we got there to work with.
Is that something that we need to instruct staff to do, or can you bring that to the April meeting and we all agree on it, or?
I'm on the.
What's the best way?
Well, okay, if you're talking about getting architectural renderings, the services for an architect are covered by statute, and you have to do a request for qualifications on that. That's got to go out, which is a process. When you get an architect involved, you might want to start looking at how much money you got in your B-part fund.
Maybe that was the wrong word. You guys draw it up. I'm just saying a couple options on what we can do.
My recommendation is we get an engineer to design the bathroom,
Yeah.
not an architect. We had an architectural rendition of the bathroom one time that was $750,000.
Yeah, we don't want all that, Mickey.
But that was a public
How
bathroom.
about just a
It's not here,
draft
by the
first?
way.
But,
But,
I've got a
yeah,
bathroom
my
in
recommendation
the
would
design.
be,
Get an engineer.
get an engineer, and then if he needs to outsource that portion, you're not doing the RFQ twice. Y'all understand what I just said? The engineer can engage his own outside architect or someone to design that. Same way we did the lift station.
but,
Lift stations don't have architects on.
No,
They have
they don't.
engineers on.
but if we go back to what you're talking about for this budget year, fiscal year, you're talking about, for right now, for that property would be the temporary restrooms. If you want us to do food vendors and RV slots, is that the restrooms that you're talking about aren't gonna be feasible for this fiscal year, right?
Not this fiscal, but when I said that I was assuming there would be a VOC approved site plan for the building and access, and what Tim has just said is, in order to start that whole process, you need an RFQ for an engineer.
Yeah, if you're gonna have, but that's depending on what we're doing there on the side. The header grant's not gonna require that. We can work that.
I'm talking about inside the building and the restrooms.
Yes, yes.
So to start the process as quickly as possible, it would be getting an RFQ out.
You could get someone with a commercial contractor's license to do a renovation on the inside, and let them do exactly what I said, and you don't have to do that RFQ process of having an architect. He's hiring them. You're doing a one-time instead of a three-time or a two-time, is what I'm saying. You go straight to the bones of the work being done. Be sort of like you guys, when y'all do renovation. Someone hires y'all to do renovation, then you hire somebody to do design. They're not hiring somebody to do design, they're hiring y'all to do renovation. Sometimes it works that way.
Well,
Well, that's a proper
I need
procedure on
to
making that happen.
remind the board, that we need to walk before we're running here. Remember, before you're gonna be able to do anything, you gotta get the results of your underwater inspection. Because that's going to determine what you can do as the relationship with the building. And then, to carry that forward into, Mr. Evans has to do a formal safety inspection of the inside of the building to make sure that everything is copacetic on the inside. Now, we've closed it, but it's gonna take some time to get to that. So before we start jumping off on figuring out how long it's gonna take to put some bathrooms up, we might wanna throttle back on committing to a timeline on what's got to be done. We get the fact that those things need to be done, but it's probably prudent for the staff to bring back to the board on the best mechanism to do that. I don't know if we need to go through an architect. I don't know if we need to do a design build solicitation for renovations. I don't know, you know, exactly how to get there from here, but we haven't spent a lot of time on that consideration being taken up with other matters to be able to get to the point of being able to make those decisions. But I'm just trying not to paint a false portrait of a deliverable when those are some baseline understandings that we haven't accomplished yet. Is it a matter of just going in and gutting the inside of the building? I don't know.
Well, you guys figure it out. We got a deep pool of local talent. I hope it stays local and reasonably priced. There's plenty of people around here capable of doing that work. So.
Correct.
Well, in any event, for the pier property then, I've written a number of things under fiscal year 22-23 for the commissioners to look at. And if you see things that you think need to be added, same for staff, or need to be changed, but there's a number of things within this whole pier long-term project, this pier property long-term project that needs to get established in year one for clarity, and then just making sure that we get the building done to only miss one season. I mean, it's like however that happens, we don't want to miss more than one season. And making the critical safety pier repairs, whatever they end up being. I mean, we know what the original due diligence report pointed out. There were a handful of things that were sort of like critical. The full inspection may show more, but we always felt it was step one to get the critical ones done first and then decide how we're going to remediate the rest of the pier. And obviously all of this includes the however many grants we can get that are acceptable terms for any and all pieces of this property is another part of the objective.
I got a question, Pat, about your
Yeah.
the under FY 22-23, the 1 to 3rd item. That's Q1 2023. That's calendar.
Calendar year, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Calendar year, yeah. I usually put FY if I mean fiscal.
I just want to make sure.
Because I just assumed that would be everybody's objective, that we have this done and, you know, by the end of March 2023 so that it's going to be in play for the next season.
I'll speak to the one that's called construct ADA compliant access on the access lot.
Yeah.
Include HC park space, Christie, you want, I say I'll speak to it. I'm going to point to Christie because that's the specific grant, the Cama access grant that we're talking about.
Right.
So before you in April will be the Partif grant, which is going to be $500,000 is what we're going to ask for. It's the max you can ask for to match for land for acquisition reimbursement. And then it will also be a DCM grant for an improvement that Tim and I are working on to get, Tim and Rhonda and I are working on together. He is coordinating cost for that, and I'm doing the narrative, and it is for a Hatteras ramp construction for that, and a walkway for that particular lot. So you should see the what they call a pre-app in April. It'll be just like the one we just did, where the pre-app will go in April. If we're invited to give a final app, that would be due in August. And then they would be making awards like the one you just accepted. So we could see that an award would probably come through what it was on your March agenda. So you would be looking at an award if you got the grant in March of '23.
And that's a reimbursement grant?
No, we wouldn't be able to do the work first. We would have to wait to see if we got approval, if you're going to use grant money on that one. For the part of grant for land acquisition and the Land and Water Trust Fund that we're going to go for in July, those we received early waivers for so that we could go ahead and purchase because it was an emergency and still be able to be considered. But anything that I know of that is considered an improvement or a remodeling or adding to, you have to have your approval first. And that usually they do not give you a waiver for anything that's an upgrade. So then you couldn't pay for it and get reimbursed. You would have to wait till you find out if you get the grant.
That goes along with my point that when you're working with somebody else's money,
Yeah.
you're working according to their
And-
rules,
and
which may not be according to your desired timeline.
Well, I mean, I was, again, just like with the building, I was hoping that we only had to go this one high season without a true handicap ramp access. And you're saying it's 2 seasons.
It likely would be 2 seasons if you're going to plan to take advantage of that grant. Because how that works is we would have to wait to get approval before we could construct it and consider them to be paying for it. Now, we would pay all of our costs and then we would submit a receipt for reimbursement. So that part, you're right, but we would have to wait. In order for them to give us any money, we would have to wait till they release funds. And in this case, they did it in February to say we were improved. You guys approved it in March for the land acquisition. So I'm assuming that they would be coming out in the same time frame next year. And then normally they reimburse by quarters, so we still wouldn't even get all the money back in one swoop.
But we can go ahead and put handicap parking spaces on that side of the parking lot anyway, to get us into compliance with the 1 for every 100 parking spaces or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay. Yes, Frank.
The handicap spaces currently, as of yesterday, are laid out adjacent to the walkway recently installed last Thursday. The number is adequately compliant with 80 total spaces. The ones in the front of the building cannot be used because the grade is too steep. And there may be the same issue, a couple spaces to the right. When you get over to the dumpster,
We will have to show 1 or 2. I'll have to look on that right side because that was a stipulation of the grant that they just accepted for the 50-foot lot.
So I guess on the compliant access, the best thing to just say is, instead of saying prior to the 2023 season, to just say to be completed as soon as possible, which feeds into the hopefully waiting for grant approval. Anything else?
On creating the specific budget section within B part
Yeah.
for the pier property project with sufficient detail, what do you mean by that? Because
I mean, I can take as an example, when Oak Island was doing an overall pier project, they had different line items where costs went in against the actual pier. There were some building renovations. So I'm just saying to have line items so that the costs go against what the remediation renovation is. So if it's a building cost, it can go in as these are the costs going for a building upgrade. You could actually subset it even and have a separate line under that for the bathroom so that the costs of what's what are clear. And part of this, I'm just going to be frank, we have a public that is very skeptical of the whole thing about what was being predicted, how much is going to be spent against what we think we understood from you guys, what we were being told, and I think some budget clarity in this would be worthwhile. I think if we're going to have different grants for the access lot and possibly specific to a pier remediation anyway, it's a good idea to have these subsets. You have the pier, you've got the building, you've got the access lot, and in a way you've got what I call the site, which is the asphalt that's being used, the area being used for both parking and RV park, which are revenues. So you've got expense for those and revenues for those. We'll have expense for the building. At some point in the future, we'll have expense for the building and revenue for the building. Same for the pier, and the access lot is always going to be just, I think, expense. And then the capital improvement plan is just going to be, this is going to be the laying out the multi-year best guesses for this whole project plan. And again, it should probably be pier, building, and the access lot. I'm assuming the other commissioners agree. I mean, this is just my thoughts of how I thought this could be best reported and tracked. I'm assuming the other commissioners think that this is a reasonable idea. I'm seeing Gerald nodding.
No, I do.
Okay.
I want it, it's gonna be a rough start if we can't lease the building next year, but I definitely want to prove that it wasn't a revenue mistake.
That's right, because listen,
Because
day one, when we took this on, my first question was this, how we're gonna pay. We knew we're gonna need a year or so to get this thing off the ground. You know what I'm saying? The main thing is that we apply, we get all the grant money we can, even if it's so much, a little long or whatever. But the thing is, it's not gonna generate a greater, if we can go ahead and start making money with the parking and leasing food spots, leasing the RV spots and everything else. That's the deal. Go ahead and start getting some revenue coming. You know what I'm saying? And then, as we learn the other things, we're gonna crawl before we get up there and run, okay? That's part of it. But the things that we can do to get some revenue coming in, it's just like the food trucks. That's nothing but a vote between the boards. Let's get them in there and get things working, okay? That's what we're after. Because we know that our money, we're doing real good on occupancy tax, you know what I'm saying? That's a blessing to the whole town. But at the same time, if we're already generating revenue with it, that's what we're after. And get it up and running as soon as possible on the things that we can do, okay? And then just keep moving. The thing is, we're in it now, let's keep moving.
Well, if there's some activity there, like food trucks,
Yeah.
RV camping, people are
Yeah.
gonna see we are doing something while we're waiting on these
There
folks
you
instead
go.
of just.
There you go. We don't want to sit here like we're doing nothing, like we're the office with the head. We're
So do
working.
you need a,
I want to qualify what I said about waiting on the grant, to do an ADA like the Hatteras ramp. I don't want to throw a wet blanket, that to be construed as a wet blanket. I think my point being that, we want to get all the grants that we can possibly qualify there for, but at some point, looking at grants as the solve-all to it is really a form of being penny wise and pound foolish.
That's right.
If there is a need to develop that public access there, I believe we can probably do some type of a shorter term solution there, but it's not going to be for emergency vehicular access. It's not going to be a full-blown Hatteras ramp, and it's not going to be a fancy structure going out there. It may be something that's more akin to the property that we have the license with Mr. Bass currently. So I don't want that to be, taken as wrong to anything out there, but, at some point in time, we might need to throw some money at it in order to make, get the desired effect.
Thank you for mentioning current license, though. Are we still under license for that next to the RV? Because I understand that Mr. Bass is.
I asked Mr. Bass about, how long before he run us off basically there, and he said that it was his intention that we're good there for a year or more. He stopped short of saying, as long as we need to, but because I told him the need to go ahead and get our program underway in this upcoming year to develop the pier property correctly, and just needed to understand how much of a rush we were going to be in if we closed on the 31st, and he gave him our 60-day notice to vacate the license over there, and I did not get that feeling from him whatsoever.
No.
Give or work with you, so
Yeah,
I feel comfortable with that.
No, because that kind of releases us from, we have to urgently do something to get vehicle access to the beach for this year.
Yeah, and should it come to that, I'm pretty sure that we've got the in-house capabilities to make that happen. That'll function for what we need. It may not be pretty.
I want to throw one thing that hasn't been mentioned. I'm not saying yay or nay, it's just something that should be said to try to generate money from the campsites that are on the east side of the pier building. Mr. Bass has the names and history of who's been staying there and so forth. With the attorney's blessing, one thought of consideration would be let Mr. Bass handle it until you choose for him not to. He can accommodate his guests. We, the town, can get the money. And, he can be the town's agent for those spaces and be no headache to the town. And of course, if the commissioners were to bless that, and Mr. Bass bless that, and the town attorney bless that, but it is a way of getting instant money and not have the headache. Just food for thought.
So they can concentrate on this other stuff. Have you had a conversation with Mr. Bass?
I have not been in any conversations with a peer in any way.
For months.
Understood.
However, since we've closed, I have had some brief discussions with Mr. Bass, and now I'm going to continue, hopefully, to discuss things like this with him. So I think he, as someone else said, Mr. Bass will work with us anyway. We ask him to.
Within reason.
Within.
So if that's the pier, for the parking, I tried to pull everything together from the different objectives. And again, assuming we have a smooth rollout, we'll have a map of the parking lots because we're going to have one. It's not going to include, as I understand, the Marsh side streets or the 800 block lots because we're waiting for the clear marsh delineation and decision on bulkheading. And at this point, I'm also assuming that we will complete a strategic purchase near the pier in the current fiscal year. Those are my assumptions when I pulled together the 22-23 objectives, which you can look at, and if there is anything you disagree with, say so, but I think that this captures all of the various things that people wrote that were all similar, and it just makes it a little bit clearer of what we should do this year.
Can I add something to it
Sure.
regarding parking? Y'all are gonna see, in the April meeting, and it's a baby step toward, it's not a, where is it here? Oh, budget section, up above in 22-23, to the point about being able to delineate revenues and expenses. You'll see in the budget amendment that's coming to you in the April meeting, where we're gonna include the revenues from the pier parking lot, or propose that they'll be there. It'll be delineated as a line item for 441, so that we can start capturing that type of detail, because I think that it's going to be important for an audit later on, that we're compliant with the parking rules on how those things are done. So that's my only comment on that first one there.
So if there's nothing more on just sort of what I put together for parking, and again, this can change at any point during the year, but I'm just trying to sort of be organized at the beginning. I grouped infrastructure together, and my assumption is that there's not going to be what I call any monetary activity, no budget actions on Lift Station 2 or the water tower needs assessment in the last couple months of this year. Now, if I'm wrong, David, say so.
No,
please.
the first line on FY 2020 that reads, including bulkheading the marsh side streets and 800 block lots.
Right.
It's clear to me, and that the 800 block lots are a very apparent candidate for that. To what degree the marsh side streets are, I don't know. So just if we qualify that, because if we go into this, the interpretation, unless I raise my hand, is going to be, I thought we were going to bulkhead those lots. Well, I don't know.
Potentially bulkheading marsh side streets and bulkheading 800 block lots. How's that? Potentially bulkheading marsh side streets. That will be a decision to be made, and bulkheading the 800 block lots. Is that?
I'm just pointing out that the 800 block lots it's
more
clear that those are really good candidates, and I'm operating in a vacuum as far as how much of a candidate the marsh side street lots are, because the marsh is the grade of the road.
Well, it could be changed. Includes prepare marsh side streets and 800 block lots for parking. And that just as that then is, and so includes preparing marsh side streets and 800 block lots for parking. And that, then any step that is necessary to do that falls under that. Is that better? Okay.
Maybe bulkhead is not the right word, but
I know.
on those delineated side streets on the marshes, if we don't do something,
We just don't know what.
then that delineation is gonna be different a year from now. Just
I think that's,
It is what it is. I'm not saying a bulkhead, I'm just saying something.
well, stabilizing?
Yeah. that's
Includes
what-
stabilizing marsh side streets and 800 block lots for parking.
Well, if this will help, I mean, I just wanted to point that out because it's a work in project progress. If you wanted to leave it like that, we've got a wetland delineation that's going to be coming forward pretty soon. That hopefully will clarify.
Has it all been done? Is it all done?
It's a draft. Tim, aren't we waiting on a couple pieces?
Okay.
Have they finished the inspections and stuff at 800 block? They were talking about bringing some machine in to bore holes, and I haven't seen that happening yet.
The machine to bore holes.
They're gonna be boring holes to check the soil, I guess. A young lady out there to put a stake in the ground, says this is where the machine's gonna go through, it's gotta be 8 feet wide. I mean, I look at it every day and I haven't seen anything happen, except somebody did clean up all the mess, the plastic and gutters and all that stuff that was back in there. But I didn't know if that process was complete.
It's a detail that escapes me. I don't know.
Okay. But it's still being worked on, though. That's all that matters. Keep it rolling.
Okay, well then, if this captures parking, you can move to infrastructure. And again, unless David says otherwise that there's stuff planned for the next couple of months, when I put this together, I didn't assume we were going to have any activity spending money on lift station 2 or water tower needs assessment in this fiscal year.
I do have two comments or questions about the parking thing. Create a complete master E-map. What is that?
I think that there should be an electronic version of the parking lots. I actually was thinking it might be a great thing for an intern this summer to do, is you actually create an evergreen electronic version of parking on the island that shows the parking lots, the slots and everything, and then we can add to it and subtract from it as things are purchased or withdrawn from designated spaces. I just think that it's something that it's valuable to have.
Tim, are y'all working on that already? All right.
Well, okay, so somebody's doing something. I didn't know if something was started on that or not. I mean, I know we have an ordinance list and table. We'll have a map that just shows locations of here's a parking lot, there's a parking lot. I'm talking about having a real deep dive into it where you can actually see the lots on a map and the orientation of spaces. And again, if we have to withdraw from it or add to it in future years, you're always going to have an up-to-date electronic map. Like, it's just computer. Okay. Well, then we can just take that out.
The meet presumed core requirements.
Yeah.
I wanna go ahead and plant a flag in the sand here that, and caution the board to not engage in hyper speculation on where the Corps' required parking for the recommended beach might be. That's a black hole that is going to consume time, energy, and the utility of engaging in that type of exercise without having the Corps' evaluation done is an exercise in futility.
And David, I would just argue at this point that there's enough guidance in the documents, and it's particularly around the accesses per half mile and 10 parking spaces within a quarter mile of the public access, that we can we can see where we don't automatically meet those requirements and think about what needs to be done. In terms of the peak number is an unknown, can do estimates based on other beaches. But the going down the beach, assuming we've kind of got our engineered beach where it needs to be, and actually that end isn't where we have the weaknesses, it's more in the middle where we're lacking, and get that down and be thinking about it. I don't think that's a bad idea to be doing that.
Well, I mean, my position, I'm going to go ahead and state it, is that I'm not going to bite on that because the Corps is going to make their determination as to what the fit of the beach is, and then that will determine. We've been told that'll be available in a year, and whether or not that's the case, I don't know.
Within this year, David?
Within a year, so at the end of the year.
That was about 3 weeks ago, so they said a year from then.
Yeah, and we know that participation in a 50-year project, one of the prime directives that we get is don't buy any real estate until you're well down the road on being signed, sealed, and delivered for a beach project. So, I mean, I'm cautioning the board. I've expressed my opinion. I just think that you're gonna create consternation and discussion that the energy and time spent there too would be more well served in the other endeavors that the board sets forth.
I was just going to go back and build on your bullets for the back of the page, talking about the sewer lift station and the stormwater briefly. And then I do have a question to go back about the pier that I didn't get in. But as far as that goes, David and I talked to Mr. McIntyre last week and his associates. They are going to be sending some paperwork forward. We are trying to work congressional, what used to be earmarks, but congressional spending. Congressman Rouser can basically put forward 3 projects for us. And so what those are at this time that we've highlighted is to make sure that the Corps includes their half of, or their portion of the beach project for the 50-year study. The second was for the sewer lift station, which it would look at us having only a 20% match to construct that, is what it looks like. Some of the department heads don't know, all of the department heads don't know this yet. They're hearing it for the first time. So, and the third project would be for stormwater, for what we were not able to capitalize on last year. If in the presidential budget, the beach project was already taken care of, that left us an alternate. It was to go to body cameras for the police department. So if that helps with your bullet items. The question that I needed to go back to before we moved on pier property with you guys making the statement about the bathrooms being finished in Q1 does that mean that you would want to not include grant money if that was an opportunity, because it would be relevant to the capital improvement plan for this year? And here's how. Part of, forget land acquisition. If we were going to do upgrades, is what we'll call it, you have to have 4 elements to do that. The 4 elements that I can get off the top of my head for you would be a public restroom, the camping facility upgrades, the pier facility, and possibly a deck off the back that you would possibly be able to count as upgrades. If you took your public restrooms away and you constructed those ahead of time, I'm not sure you could get to your 4th site element there to be eligible for that grant, and that's fine. We could take that one off the table. But in order to get all our points on scoring, we would need to identify that we were going to do that in the capital improvement plan that we put forward when we passed the upcoming budget, because we get the most points that way. So I guess I just need guidance on if you're solid that you want to do it before you would hear, otherwise that grant wouldn't come through until October, which would push you to the end of 2023.
Yeah, which means we don't have the building for 2 seasons. Right? You're basically saying that building is not, so we don't have anything for that building for 2 seasons.
If you're going to use that grant. But
Right,
I just
okay.
I need us to flesh that out as you're talking about this, because we get extra points when it's identified in the plan.
This is a commissioner, this is a commissioner discussion. This is not me. This is not me. This is a commissioner, whole board discussion.
It's an economic decision. I mean, it's cut and dry. You have to weigh it out and see what's the best way to go. Where you lose rent on a building, but you get a grant, you know,
What kind of money is that
you'd have to
grant?
get the specifics.
So here's how it works. The most you can ask for is $500,000. We're asking for $500,000 this year for land acquisition. Because we were forward-thinking and put in a request for a waiver, and because we are doing as hard as we can to go to get one in for this cycle, it's going to allow you 2 goes at $500,000 for land acquisition. If you were to get it on the first go this time, and in October you were told that you had an award, technically you could apply next year for the development. If you didn't get it this time, I would advise the board just to go for acquisition next year, because they look at land as more of a priority than development.
What would the amount of money be for development?
You can always ask for up to $500,000, but those are they give about 3 $500,000 grants out statewide.
So
Like between 3 or 5. If you're going to go for development, you usually need to go around 150 to 200 where they're matching it, so it'd be a total of 400. You're committing half. You have to commit half.
And this would be development of anything on the whole pier property.
You have to have 4 that they consider
Right, so-
recreational elements.
So you were talking about pier deck, and bathrooms, and, yeah. So it's not just linked to the building, it's linked to multiple things on the site.
So to put that in my head, that $200,000, we won't get that on revenue from renting that building. So it would be, if you thought that it was possible to get that grant, then that seems to be worth waiting for. But that's a simple decision, kind of. Just weigh it out. If we don't get the land acquisition money, then we probably go ahead and build the bathroom.
If you don't get land acquisition, you'd want to try for land acquisition again next year
right,
at
but you wouldn't wanna
500,000, and
wait.
you could just build your bathrooms on your own then. It would only happen if you got awarded in October, and then you had the ability to go in for development.
I don't think, if we didn't get that, I don't think we'd want to wait another year to build bathrooms, is all I'm saying. And I think we need to, at that point, go ahead.
So it would be renovate building to include ADA compliant restrooms and lease out. Target completion no later than Q1 2023 if grant is not available. Does that capture it accurately? Obviously, if we're going to seek grants, then we're just going to suck it up and say, well, the building will be closed for 2 seasons. But it financially makes sense.
I'll add an opinion in on that. Those $500,000 grants, there's 3 of them a year-ish, a year. If the town gets a $500,000 grant for land acquisition, I don't think we've got a chance to get another $500,000 grant the next year for development, just for the practical realities of, I'm sure that there are other locations. Now, that's just my opinion. I'm not trying to get out of writing a grant. We'll do it, but you got to think about, there's east, there's Piedmont, and there's west. Those are the 3. And Holden Beach got a $500,000 to buy a pier last year. We're gonna look at Manio.
I'll just
That's
write it
just Dave.
if grant is not a consideration. target completion no later than Q1 2023 if grant is not a consideration. Anyway.
Well, I think that we got our direction there because there's some practical aspects of developing the property that we've got to move forward with. That the board's gonna have to set money on the table to get ready to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do.
Okay, if we go back to infrastructure now.
Sorry.
Again, my assumption was that Lift Station 2 water tower needs assessment isn't going to have any money spent on it in this fiscal year. If I'm wrong, David, and there are things that you're going to do in the last quarter, say so. Okay, then obviously we're back to the thing about, we've got Lift Station 2 to consider, the stormwater, and thank you, Christy, for pointing out that we've got a lot of stuff going on that Mike McIntyre will be working on, that we're going to try and get federal assistance for these. But in this upcoming year, we do need, we didn't really like delaying Lift Station 2, but we were hoping prices would go down. I don't think any of us expect prices to go down. So a decision's going to have to be made. Do we go forward with Lift Station 2, or are we sitting it out another year, knowing that every year we sit out, there's that risk? The stormwater issue is really about getting started with contracting with a firm for an island-wide assessment and proposed improvement plan.
Well, I'm gonna chime in there. If there's beauty in the sewer lift station 2
Yeah.
picture, it's a matter of calling Leo up and say, put it out for bid.
I know,
So
I know.
the heavy lifting, as far as the engineering has been done, is a timing issue as to whether or not. Now, Leo is working on a proposal, although we're working the McIntyre thing to get a federal. He is working a proposal that should be coming forward soon on a no-cost or low-cost rural money to finance it. But all those things getting set to the side and not happening, it's a matter of just telling us to move forward with putting it out for bid. Now, depending on when we put it out for bid, can be tied to the success of those grant applications.
Yeah.
What, did we not get some fund from the American Rescue Plan?
You got
$200,000.
you got a $200,000 appropriation, the first half of which came in this past year, and the second will come soon. Yeah, in next fiscal year.
And we sort of
And
earmarked
what's it?
that
For
for
stormwater.
for getting a stormwater plan together.
Well, no, that money was earmarked for the project on
Oh,
Ocean Boulevard.
The bike lanes, stormwater, yes.
Right. But that $200,000 was budgeted for the stormwater, projected stormwater fix on Ocean Boulevard.
Right, yes. Okay, there's the second water tower needs assessment that needs to happen before we can make any decisions on what to do next on that. And then again, which sounds like everybody's already doing it, is to keep up on what grants might be available for infrastructure projects that we have coming.
I do want to point out, or have to point out, that the second water tower needs assessment is specifically addressed in the land use plan, and that land use plan says that we don't need a second water tower. And
No, it doesn't.
that is not
No,
the position of
I thought
the
I-
administration or.
I thought we changed that because I was arguing about that it would not clearly say we didn't need another one. We need to review that, but I thought that got resolved because I was arguing about that from the first draft that we got. that it shouldn't be crystal, it should not make a statement that we don't need one.
I
the
may
land
be
use plan
mistaken,
is
but that's
only-
my
It's
impression.
only guidance, it is not necessarily meant to dictate what we do. That's what I've always been told about the land use plan.
My recommendation would be to, because of the new guidelines that are being discussed and decided about how the land use plan is going to be used in Wilmington and for grants and other stuff, it is my recommendation that if it is not the board's wish to have any kind of language that even remotely resembles that in your land use plan, that we amend that plan to get it out of it.
Put a proposal forward for what needs amending. And what
My
needs to
intentions
stay.
are to bring it forward in the July meeting. We've got a list to bring forward. We were waiting for the budget workshop and some other stuff, but we have a list of some changes that needs to be made that's either been brought up or that we've recognized as being issues, and that is one of those issues. Somehow it squeaked through. It somehow got in there. It was discussed in length, but you got to remember there was a committee voting on it and the board voted on it, and that language is in there in a manner that needs to come out. It's not, like you said, it is a comprehensive plan, but that plan is being discussed in Wilmington in a way where staff in Wilmington can look at those when it comes to both grants and as far as approvals for future projects. So it needs to come out.
In the meantime, for purposes of the budget, we're gonna
It's-
make sure that there's money in there for
Yeah,
a second
I was
water
gonna say,
tower
It
assessment.
still fits the timing for
Right.
happening in the next fiscal year.
Right.
Okay, and then the last kind of overarching was just 796 OBW. And first thing is, before we can really do any planning, the board has to decide. We saw presentation on opportunities with 796, but the board has not made a decision. There wasn't a voted decision of any sort. So the board has to confirm what they expect 796 to turn into before things can be fleshed out. Again, I was assuming the board would make a decision this year, but it could still happen early next year, early in the next fiscal year, to be able to develop the site plan after we make a decision. And when I say do the necessary budgetary actions for B-Part to purchase the property from water sewer, that all has to do with putting the money where it belongs. So that was basically how I viewed 796, is get the plan together with costs for the modifications that are going to be needed. Whether or not an actual work gets done next fiscal year on 796, I think is going to decide on the overall, all of these different priorities, they're going to have to be paid out of the same pots of money. So those were just 4 projects that I pulled out that I thought were all important and to have just more detail. And it removes quite a few things from this objectives list that we generally then score. Because I'm just assuming every one of us would say that these 4 projects are all 3. They need to happen, they must happen. I'm done.
And commissioners want to proceed.
Well, there were quite a few other things on the
Yeah.
proposed objectives that weren't mentioned in this. These are the major projects.
No, we still have to go through,
We
and
gotta do-
anything not linked to it, we should give a number.
So you want to start Go down the pages, put a number on them,
Yeah,
one at a time.
or at least we agree which ones we have to score, and we can do like in the past years, that we can all do it individually and hand them to Heather for her to tabulate. But we have to agree which ones stay and which ones are covered by this, by the pier parking, infrastructure, and 796 details.
Okay. I do have a question.
Mhm.
Some of us have to be
I know.
at 5 o'clock. I know I need to have a bath and put on some different clothes.
So it's 5:30. You mean the council?
The meal starts at 5:30.
You mean the Council of Governments?
Yeah,
No, the doors open at 5:30. The meeting and the meal starts at 6:30 according to what I had. Did I get something that got changed and I don't know it?
I don't know what time you want me to have.
You're correct.
Because I wanted to get out of here by 4:30.
Drinking stops at 5:30.
Well, we gotta get
Well,
moving.
there's short introduction by the way.
Do you want to recess the meeting? Is that where you're going?
I don't care, but I just want to do what you commissioners want to do.
Well, we gotta do that.
Yeah, Rick's got things, he's got to look over there
Okay,
and everything.
if we go through this list and remove everything that doesn't need to be scored, and then we all take it home and score it and send it to Heather to tabulate, can that work? That should be fairly quick.
All right, make it quick.
Okay. You can scratch number 1. Under amenities, parks, and rec. Anticipate beach access parking needs, scratch it. Continue to evaluate parking opportunities, scratch it. Bring all town-owned parking lot areas usable, scratch it. Map all parking, scratch it. Buy and secure block Q, scratch it. The lobby wildlife and county to build mainland boat ramp stays. Decide uses for 796, scratch it. Create a restroom plan, that stays. Trash cans, replace entry at OVW. I have to admit, I don't know what that means.
There used to be trash cans at the end of the walkways on the Ocean Boulevard side.
Those still be there, usually just keep those out there seasonal.
Uh-huh.
Out there, if they're seasonal. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we can get rid of that. Dog waste stations, public accesses, which side of the access are we talking? Street side or beach
Either
side?
one. There's just, if people go to the beach and they forget to take bags, they leave their dog. It's becoming a lot more accumulated.
It's always been a problem.
Okay.
But you're saying dog waste stations on the beach side or the street side? I just want to know.
Go ahead.
Well, I would propose something on the trend side, because that would be a nightmare trying to keep them up.
Right.
And really, it's very expensive.
I was thinking more towards,
From what I've noticed out of trash cans, they use those trash cans for dog waste stations just as much as they use that
Yes,
dedicated source.
yes, they do.
I guess the main thing is providing bags for people who don't have bags.
And I would be scared to say how many thousands of bags that we bought this past year, because it becomes a nightmare. I think people come by and they see one of these stations.
Take the whole thing.
And they take the whole book, I don't know, they have trash bags at their house and what, but, we try to
Okay,
keep that up.
I guess we understand it, leave it to score it. Construct dog park, leave it. Buy and secure pier property, gone. Develop a site plan for the pier property, that's gone. Repair fitness trail, stays. Additional bike racks, stays. Complete no wake zone, stays. General, complete OVW paving and bike path, stays. Paint mark crosswalk, stays. Get rid of bulkhead wetlands. What?
The crosswalks that you're talking about?
It's got to be scored, but yeah, go ahead.
That's obviously something we can only put those down on the state and as DOT approves it.
That's my understanding too.
My understanding is they were going to do that for us. We had approval for them, and they told us to wait until they would do them, and they would do them. We've already got them approved. That was my understanding.
Yeah, and there's, so scratch because we can't do it. Map all wetlands, I guess, I don't understand exactly what that means.
Delineate what?
They're delineated.
Delineate your street.
Okay, so it's done, scratch it.
Yeah.
Monitor, adjust paid parking, scratch it. Request Brunswick County support, keep. Oceanfront lighting ordinance, keep. Invasive plants, keep. Monitor IHA, keep. Detective position, keep. Body cameras, keep. Open position building inspections, keep. What does beach sand, who and how mean? I didn't understand that objective.
Repeat.
It says beach sand, who and how.
I guess that would keep it open front, open mindset on that.
How are we gonna keep saying on the beach? Who's gonna do it?
You mean FEMA versus Army Corps? That's ongoing.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything budgetary we need to do.
Scratch?
Scratch it. Landscaping, key. Infrastructure, all of this can go because we did the infrastructure. Paving Seagull will be done before the next fiscal year, so, okay. Communication, audio, keep. Post BOCM message format, keep. Town blast, keep. Possibly have 2 town meetings, keep. Finance budget.
Wait a minute.
What? No, we have to score it. I didn't say we do, we need to score it. Somebody.
I was just clearing my throat.
I know you were, I heard you, I understand, but somebody put it in and we need to score it.
How many commissioners want to have 2 meetings tonight?
I'd rather have 6 than 1 6-hour.
You know, I've had
No,
several,
sir.
I've had several residents say, couldn't you just schedule 2 a month? And then if you don't use one, you just, you find you don't need it. If you put it in the schedule so people keep it free.
Those of us that have been that route.
I'm just
And
saying.
then the person drives down from Raleigh expecting a meeting and find out, no, you cancel that one. You know, there's 2 sides of that.
Yeah, you gotta have them if you're gonna schedule, I think.
I'll do whatever you commissioners
Well,
want to do.
why don't we see what people, I get what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, I get what you're saying. Finance budget, these all.
Wait a minute,
What?
Stop.
What?
What are we doing on the meeting deal?
You
We're gonna
scored it.
score it.
Huh?
We
score
score it. It stays, but we score it,
Same thing you did last year, buddy.
okay? We're just taking out the things that we don't need to score.
Got you covered, yeah, on.
So, finance budget, 1, 2, 3, get rid of the apply for all available grants, and we've already covered that. Budget transparency. Okay.
I'll speak to the very last line. The detail in the budget lines covering professional service enabling understanding of which firm has received reimbursement and for what purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means because I'm assuming that you're talking about the FEMA reimbursements.
No, I'm talking about when we have professional services, it's just a professional service line item. It doesn't actually say who the professional, who the contract is with.
But the purpose here is to enable understanding of which firm has received reimbursement and for what purpose. Are you talking about showing in the budget a line item for each firm that we contract with?
If it's for
Because that's not a gap acceptable practice. You organize by function, not by.
But you can have subsets within for clarity. I'm simply saying this is another question we frequently get, which is there's a lot of
Well, I hadn't got any questions like
No,
that.
I
I've
get
had
them
one
from-
question in 10 years
I
on
get
a
them
budget line item. And if there are questions
David,
related to
this is
line item budgets, that detail is available, but this is creating a process that's not necessary. I mean, are we going to, because this is professional services, are we going in the governing bodies, line item per se, are we going to have Rick Green, attorney at law, auditor, the 5 or 6 professional services by name in each one of those services?
You can have town attorney expenses, you can have auditor expenses, you can have professional engineer expenses, you can have whatever.
I have never gotten any question as to who has a
Oh, I do.
question.
I do.
Well,
because
why don't you
people-
relay them to us, and we'll provide that detail to them instead of creating a whole separate accounting system to answer one question. It's managing by exception. And instead of managing by exception,
It's called budget
we need to do
transparency.
less with less. Okay, I'm going to talk about transparency. Transparency means that it's invisible. Okay? We can provide any type of visibility at the budget line detail when someone makes an inquiry. So, however y'all want to score it, I don't care. But it's work that doesn't need to be done.
Get credit card machines for admin to take payments, keep. Policies and procedures, keep. And then the evergreens were basically from last year. And then there are the ones that got added, which, Heather, I'm going to have to ask you to send everybody an email with those specifically, because it was the easement for
Why don't
Heron.
I just take everything you just crossed out, add Gerald's couple, and just send them back out for you guys?
That would be great.
Perfect. Can you do it in another Word document? So it can be,
And
so I can do it again?
Absolutely.
And I will make the changes on this consolidated objectives and send it to you.
Can I ask for clarification on the bike racks at public accesses before you guys score that? Typically, how that works is they cost between $400 and $600 for the galvanized that we put out at the accesses each year, and we try to order 4 to 5 new ones in the springtime, right around this time before the budget rolls over, when it's the season, and we put them out new where they are lacking, and we try to update and move along, so we can't order new ones for each one of them based on cost. So if I can better understand, or before you guys score that, if you can understand how much that it costs to order them, that might help you.
So you're saying you have a program,
We do.
and eventually every public access will have a bike rack when,
Where there's space that it can fit, right, Chris? Because Public Works works on that too.
That's exactly right. There's possibly,
so it sounds like we don't really need it as a VOC objective because it's just happening. Okay.
The issue I had with one was the number of spaces, like at some of the walkways, the public walkways. Is there another place, maybe some of the right-of-way that we're not using for parking? Would there be possible to put, because at my access, I know of, there's a space for 5 bikes, and there's 20 there on the weekends in the summer.
all we really have is right away right there at access lane. Some of them like on the community wide, but if you've got access lane and it's vacant property,
Right.
and no houses there, sometimes you might impose it as some on the playing lane. If the house is built in some other and got a bike rack there and blocking the driveway.
What about some of
Yeah,
the,
they may be some places like, fit the frame of some of those side streets, and you might be trying to really squeeze some in, and maybe some of the other places go bad, other than that.
is it possible to use some of the right-of-way space that maybe they said we couldn't use for parking because of the fire trucks? It wouldn't impede the emergency vehicles?
At your particular access, I don't think there's anything left. Because to the west is an adjacent property line.
I just noticed that some of the public accesses, that there's multiple bikes, and they're stacking them in people's yards, and there's the electric bikes now, and there's just,
There's a problem where you're at because of the emergency drive-over access there. I mean, it's.
they're blocking it, yeah.
There have been bicycles driven over.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
of the firehouse.
Across the firehouse. There's just there's a couple public accesses that just, there's multiple bikes and they're stacked up along the dock, the laying on top of each other.
After the bike path and resurfacing job is complete, it'll be easier to just decide where to put the racks.
So I guess that was the thing, it's just the need for an increase in,
What was happening there, I'm really trying to
it's gonna increase in,
anxious to see what it's gonna look like when we add more asphalt. I'm anxious to be less
right.
space than what it is now.
I know.
Well, I guess that's the current,
Maybe that where some of these side streets, maybe you can take the first, parking place or something other than just reserve that first parking place for all bicycles and have to get racks on those. So they're not right at the access way, but.
right, well, I think,
There's the parking.
yeah, so the need is if we could provide another spot near the access for them to have a bike rack so they can see we can park the bike there, then they won't be, I just think there's a need to increase the number.
Yeah, well, I'd say just put the bike rack up here, color park, yeah,
Right.
what's possible to put it over there at access.
Or if the marshes can't be used for parking, is it a possibility to put bike parking that won't damage the marsh?
I'm sure it would be, if you might have to put the right thing on, whichever it goes to.
It sounds like we're really saying evaluate where extra bike racks can
Right.
go this year, and then when the bike lanes go in, this can be precise.
And you have to monitor, you see one access way and all the racks are seeing, boom, 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 and you can place it, boom, place it off.
While we're talking bike lanes, I just, when we got this, the estimate for Seagull, I had this like sort of bad thought. Are we gonna have to increase our budget, David, for our share of bike lanes with DOT? Is it gonna cost more than, do you think it's gonna end up costing a lot more than anticipated?
Well, the first answer to the first part of that question is DOT gonna have enough money to do all these projects? And I don't know. But the portion of the bike lane that we're signed up for, should there be an increase in that piece of it, GSATs is going to pick up the delta on it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's it.
I got to say one thing, because it's a bit disconcerting to me that the commissioners may be under the assumption, and I'm only basing this comment on the fact that I didn't see it anywhere in any of these goals. The commissioners may be basing that on the assumption that just because those pipes get pulled off the beach with this FEMA project, that she's a done deal, boys. The heavy lifting on the administrative side now begins, because we have a $27 million special obligation bond out that FEMA has reimbursed us to date a de minimis amount. I shared with y'all last week that we have cut a couple of 2 Cama checks to them and have not received reimbursements for it. So that, until those big checks start coming in, I just want to make sure the commissioners are cognizant of the fact that you have the equivalent of a 3-year balloon note that's tied to the interest rate, and until we get those reimbursements back from FEMA and pay back PNC, that you're on the hook for $27 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just don't think that that happens in a vacuum. It takes a lot of lever pullers in the background to work those 4 storms reimbursements and to make sure that everything is airtight.
Will you cover and explain to us the impact of not getting the money immediately? We're having to advance the money. is that, or is that not a direct cost loss to us?
Well,
Can you address that?
We are attempting to have FEMA pay the interest cost on the note, and that has not been answered to the satisfaction of, we know that we're going to have that interest paid for as part of the project. We have received information, and oh, by the way, we've been asking that question now for 9 months, and it's been through several evolutions of FEMA staff. I believe that the first interest payment that we just remitted was $250,000 on that outstanding sinking fund note. And so we're going to be in limbo and in jeopardy until those funds start coming back to us. We're engaged with, we've talked to everybody that we know at the staff level, and have been in contact with Congressman Rouser's office for assistance in that matter. Now, where it goes, I don't know, but I would be remiss in my duty to not impose upon you that it is a concern and could impact a number of things going forward. To what extent, I don't know.
All right, anything else on item number 4 on the agenda? So my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, the clerk's going to upgrade our list of objectives. We're going to score those and return those scored sheets to the clerk, and she will put that together for us for the next meeting, right? Yes. All right, we ready to move on to number 5? Assuming we are.
I believe the attorney would like to add to number 5.
We need a motion to add to the session.
Is that what you're going to add to? Do you have a different topic than we've already got listed for number 5, or do you just want to expand the discussion in the executive session?
Well, actually, it's covered in the last sentence. Instruct the staff or agent concerning the negotiation of the pricing in terms of contracts concerning acquisition.
Okay, so we're covered.
Well,
I
no,
disagree.
We're not.
We're not.
Yeah, we're
It's
not,
not.
because
That's
I
not what
didn't-
it's on.
That wasn't the properties that were intended, so if anybody had asked about the properties, I wouldn't have supplied the ones. So we just need to add the property that you guys wanted to discuss.
Correct, you?
Oh, okay.
But we just need to, I'll read the normal thing, and we just want to say that we want to add block Q in case anybody's listening, that's all.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
All right, so, Mr. Brown, did you want to make a motion?
Motion that we add, from Mr. Green, he wants to add in track Q, negotiations on track Q, correct?
Block Q, yes, sir, that's correct.
Block Q.
There's a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Executive session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A6 to discuss qualifications, competence, performance of a public employee, and North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A5 to instruct the staff or agent concerning the negotiation of the price and terms of contracts concerning the acquisition of real property.
All right. Okay, we're out of executive session, back in regular session. Any motions of any kind?
Motion to adjourn.
No, the town
And
attorney.
I have two real quick comments, if
All right.
I may. One is, Monday after we recorded Deer property documents, when I came back, Gil Bass and his son were in my office, and he just stopped in to thank me for the work I had done. And the comment he made about the purchase was he felt as though the town should always have owned the pier. And I I won't ever forget him saying that. He said, it is in the right place. So, you know, I just take it that, you know, insofar as the future is, he needs some help from Gil, I think he'll give it to the town. And then personally, on the agenda, there was an item on there for improvement of the sound system. And there is what is called T-coil. And I don't know how much it costs. It's something that allows the people who have hearing aids like I do, and you've got a lot of elderly people here, that this T-coil automatically pumps it into your hearing aids. So I would like some inquiry as to whether that could be done and what the cost might be, because I don't know. I know that, the Wilson Center up in Wilmington, they have that system. So people go to concerts with hearing aids, they can hear pretty much the same as anybody who doesn't have any hearing aids. So that's all I have to say about that.
That's it. Anything else before the chair entertains a motion to adjourn?
I'll second that one.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, already made the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous consensus.